The notification sound from Leda's phone at 3 in the morning should have been my first clue that our relationship was about as stable as a beta build full of bugs. But there I was, lying in my cramped Boston apartment, pretending to be asleep while my girlfriend of 2 years giggled at messages from someone whose contact name I couldn't see from my angle. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Milo Chen. Yeah, I know, not exactly the most intimidating name for someone planning revenge. 29 years old, senior game designer at Pixel Dream Studio, and apparently the kind of guy who gets cheated on by Instagram influencers. The irony wasn't lost on me that I spent my days creating virtual worlds where heroes always won, while my real life played out like a badly scripted tutorial level. "Who's texting you this late?" I mumbled, rolling over to face Leda. She quickly flipped her phone face down, that practice motion that probably came as naturally to her as breathing. "Just Yasmin, talking about tomorrow's shoot." Leda Martinez was everything I thought I wanted when we met at a tech conference 2 years ago. 28, with the kind of effortless beauty that translated perfectly to social media, she'd built a following of nearly 200,000 people who hung on her every post about lifestyle, fashion, and whatever protein powder was sponsoring her that month. What I didn't realize then was that dating an influencer meant constantly competing with her phone for attention. "Yasmin texts you at 3 a.m. about photo shoots?" I sat up, running a hand through my messy black hair. "The influencer world doesn't sleep, babe." She kissed my cheek, that automatic gesture that felt more like a reflex than affection. "You wouldn't understand." And there it was, that dismissive tone that had become as familiar as her morning skincare routine. I wouldn't understand because I was just a game developer, someone who created entertainment for people instead of being the entertainment myself. In Leda's world, I was like downloadable content, optional, occasionally useful, but never essential to the main experience. The next morning, I watched her get ready for what she called a casual brunch, but which involved 45 minutes of makeup and 3 outfit changes. She documented the entire process on her Instagram story, of course, but I noticed something that made my stomach clench. She carefully angled every shot to avoid showing me in the background. "I'll probably be out most of the day," she said, checking her reflection one final time. "Meeting with some brands. You know how it is." I knew how it was. It meant I'd spend another Saturday alone while she networked with people who measured their worth in followers and engagement rates. It meant another day of being the invisible boyfriend, present in her life but absent from her brand. After she left, I did what any self-respecting game developer would do when faced with a mystery. I started investigating. I wasn't proud of it, but I checked her laptop, which she'd left open on the kitchen counter. Her Instagram DMs were a maze of brand partnerships, collaboration requests, and comments from fans. But buried in there were messages from someone named Brett Davidson. Brett's profile showed a guy in his early 30s, all expensive suits and luxury car photos. His bio read, "brand consultant and lifestyle curator," which seemed like a fancy way of saying he helped rich people spend money on stupid things. But what caught my attention were the timestamps on his messages with Leda. They went back months, often late at night, and had a tone that was definitely not professional. "Can't wait to see you again," read one from 3 days ago. "That red dress you wore last time is still driving me crazy." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Leda had worn a red dress to what she'd called a boring brand meeting last week. She'd come home late, claiming the dinner had run long and had been unusually affectionate, the kind of guilt-driven attention that I'd stupidly interpreted as her finally making an effort in our relationship. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Zach, who worked with me at the studio. "Dude, saw Leda's story from last night. Who's the guy in the Porsche?" I hadn't seen her story from last night. With shaking fingers, I pulled up Instagram and navigated to her profile. There, in a story that would disappear in a few hours, was a photo of her hand holding a champagne glass, with a man's arm visible in the frame. The sleeve of his shirt was expensive, and in the background, I could see the interior of a luxury car. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. She'd told me she was having a quiet dinner with Yasmin and would be home early. I screenshot the image and sent it to Zach with a message. "Know anything about this?" His response came back immediately. "Oh man, Milo, I think we need to talk." 20 minutes later, Zach was at my apartment with coffee and the kind of serious expression he usually reserved for debugging critical game-breaking glitches. Zach Morrison was everything I wasn't. Tall, confident, and blessed with the kind of easy charm that made him our studio's go-to guy for client presentations. He'd been my friend since college, which meant he was also the only person who remembered what I was like before I started dating someone who treated me like a supporting character in my own life. I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, he said, settling onto my couch. But I've been hearing things. What kind of things? The kind of things that make me want to punch people, but I figured you should hear them first. Zach pulled out his phone. Sarah from the marketing department went to some influencer event last week. She saw Lita there with this Brett guy, and they weren't exactly acting like business partners. He showed me a photo Sarah had taken, a group shot of people at what looked like an upscale restaurant. In the background, barely visible but unmistakable, were Lita and Brett. His hand was on her lower back, and she was leaning into him in a way that was definitely not professional. "There's more," Zach said gently. Sarah heard some of the other influencers talking. Apparently Lita's been telling people that you two are taking a break, and that she's exploring her options. The coffee in my mouth suddenly tasted like ash. She's been telling people we're on a break? For at least a month, according to Sarah. I set down my mug with hands that weren't quite steady. A month. That meant every time she'd come home late, every business dinner and networking event, every night she'd been too tired for conversation or affection. She'd been building a life that didn't include me while letting me believe we were working towards something together. "What are you going to do?" Zach asked. I looked around my apartment at the framed photos of Lita and me that she'd insisted on displaying but never posted online, at the expensive skincare products she'd left scattered across my bathroom counter, at the life I'd built around someone who was apparently already gone. "I'm going to update my status," I said. Zach raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" I was already reaching for my laptop, my fingers moving with the kind of focused determination I usually reserved for solving complex coding problems. "It means Lita's about to learn that some games have consequences. The first rule of effective revenge, I learned from years of designing games, is that the best plot twists are the ones your opponent never sees coming. Lita thought she was playing a single-player game where she could rewrite the rules without consequences. She was about to discover she'd been in multiplayer mode all along. I started with reconnaissance, which was easier than it should have been. Lita had connected all her social media accounts to my Netflix, Spotify, and Amazon Prime, which meant I had access to more information about her daily routine than any ex-boyfriend should. I could see what she was watching, what music she was listening to, even what she was ordering online. It painted a picture of someone living a double life with impressive dedication. The expensive lingerie orders that I'd never seen her wear, the restaurant reservations at places we'd never been together, the Spotify playlists with names like New Beginnings and Confidence Boost that she'd created right around the time she started telling people we were on a break. But the real goldmine was her Google Calendar, which she'd shared with me months ago during one of her brief attempts at being a more organized girlfriend. She'd apparently forgotten about this because it contained a detailed record of her deception. Lunch with B appeared twice a week for the past month. Shopping with B showed up every weekend. There was even an entry for last Tuesday that just said B's Place, 8 p.m. on the same night she'd told me she was attending a mandatory brand workshop. I screenshot everything, organizing it into a folder on my desktop that I labeled Evidence. Then I started researching Brett Davidson. Social media made stalking ridiculously easy. Brett's LinkedIn showed he was the founder of Lifestyle Elevation Consulting, which seemed to be a company that helped influencers monetize their personal brands. His client list included several people I recognized from Lita's circle, which explained how they'd met. His Instagram was a carefully curated display of wealth. Expensive watches, luxury vacations, and photos of him at high-end events with various attractive women. But the most interesting thing I found was his wedding photos from 3 years ago. Brett Davidson was married to a woman named Natalie Chen, no relation, despite the shared last name, who worked as a corporate lawyer at a prestigious Boston firm. Her own LinkedIn showed an impressive career trajectory and a profile photo that radiated competence and intelligence. She looked like the kind of person who wouldn't appreciate discovering her husband was having an affair with a social media influencer. This was when I realized Lita wasn't just cheating on me, she was helping Brett cheat on his wife. It added a layer of moral complexity that made my planned revenge feel less petty and more like justice. I spent the rest of Saturday building what I called my intelligence database. Screenshots, timeline reconstructions, and a detailed analysis of both Lita's and Brett's online presence. By the time Lita came home that evening, smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine, I had enough information to write a comprehensive biography of her affair. "How was your day, babe?" she asked, kissing my cheek with lips that had probably been on Brett's a few hours earlier. "Productive," I said. "I've been working on a new project." "Game stuff?" "Something like that." She was already scrolling through her phone, probably checking to see how many likes her latest post had received. She'd uploaded a photo of her brunch, artfully arranged avocado toast with the caption Sunday self-care vibes, even though it was Saturday, and even though I was pretty sure the expensive-looking restaurant wasn't the kind of place you went alone. "I'm exhausted," she said, heading toward the bedroom. "All this networking is draining." "I'll bet it is," I thought, but I just nodded and told her I'd be up late working. Sunday morning brought phase 2 of my plan. While Leda was at what she claimed was a yoga class, though her Google Calendar said B, coffee, 10 a.m., I paid a visit to someone who could help me level up my revenge game. Priya Patel lived in a converted warehouse in Cambridge, which she'd turned into a combination apartment and robotics laboratory. I'd met her 2 years ago at a hackathon where she'd built a robot that could solve Rubik's Cubes faster than most humans could scramble them. She was brilliant, funny, and had the kind of practical problem-solving skills that made her invaluable when you needed to think outside conventional parameters. "Milo!" She answered the door wearing safety goggles and a t-shirt covered in what looked like motor oil. "This is unexpected. What brings you to my mad scientist lair?" "I need help with a project," I said. "The kind that requires your particular expertise and creative solutions." Priya raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried about the legality of whatever you're planning?" "Everything I'm planning is completely legal," I assured her. "Morally questionable, maybe, but definitely legal." She grinned. "Those are my favorite kind of projects. Come in." I explained the situation while she worked on what appeared to be a robotic arm that could paint miniature portraits. Priya was one of those people who processed information better when her hands were busy, so I talked while she calibrated servos and adjusted programming parameters. "So your girlfriend is cheating on you with a married guy, and you want revenge," she summarized when I finished. "What exactly are you hoping to accomplish?" "I want them to face consequences for their actions," I said. "Real consequences, not just the mild inconvenience of having to remember which lies they've told to which people." "And you're sure you want to go down this road? Once you start this kind of thing, it's hard to stop." I thought about the past month of being treated like an inconvenience in my own relationship, of being dismissed and marginalized while Leda built a life that didn't include me. I thought about Brett's wife, probably sitting at home believing she was married to someone faithful, while her husband was posting Instagram stories from expensive restaurants with his mistress. "I'm sure," I said. Priya nodded slowly. "Okay, but we're going to do this smart. No illegal hacking, no property damage that can't be easily repaired, and nothing that could get you arrested or sued. We're going to ruin them using nothing but the truth and their own poor decisions. Can you help me?" She grinned, and I saw the same expression she'd worn when she was solving impossible engineering problems at the hackathon. "Milo, I thought you'd never ask." Monday morning brought the first test of my new strategy. Leda was getting ready for what she called a brand partnership meeting, but what her calendar listed as lunch with B, discuss collaboration. I watched her choose an outfit that was definitely more seductive than professional, and I realized this was probably how she'd been dressing for all her business meetings over the past month. "You look nice," I said, which was true. She looked incredible, which made the betrayal sting even more. "Thanks, babe. This client is really important for my career." "I'm sure he is." She missed the emphasis I put on he, too busy checking her makeup in her phone camera to notice the edge in my voice. After she left, I implemented phase 1 of what Priya and I had dubbed Operation Status Update. I logged into the Netflix account that we shared and created a new profile called Brett's Girlfriend. Then I started watching romantic comedies and adding them to a playlist called Movies to Watch with my side piece. It was petty, but it was also strategic. Leda was obsessive about her streaming recommendations, always complaining when my sci-fi binges messed up her algorithm. The new profile would definitely get her attention, and when she asked about it, I'd have the perfect opportunity to start revealing what I knew. But that was just the appetizer. The main course required more sophisticated planning. Priya had done some research of her own and discovered that Brett's lifestyle elevation consulting company was hosting a networking event that Thursday at an upscale hotel in downtown Boston. The event was called Influence and Impact Monetizing Your Personal Brand and was designed to attract exactly the kind of people who were in Leda's social circle. More importantly, it was the kind of event where Brett would want to show off his success and his beautiful companion. "How do you know they'll both be there?" I asked Priya when she outlined the plan. "Because Leda already RSVP'd," she said, showing me her laptop screen. I found the event registration list. She's listed as Brett Davidson's +1, which is interesting since his wife is listed as attending too. My stomach dropped. His wife is going to be there? Natalie Chen, corporate lawyer, probably doesn't know her husband is bringing his mistress to a professional event. This could get ugly fast. Good, I said, though I felt a twinge of sympathy for Natalie. She didn't deserve to be humiliated in public, but she also deserved to know the truth about her marriage. What's the plan? I asked. Priya smiled, and I recognized the expression she got when she was about to explain something brilliantly devious. We're going to attend this event, and we're going to document everything, but more importantly, we're going to make sure that certain information becomes public in the most dramatic way possible. She showed me the event website, which featured a live streaming component for people who couldn't attend in person. The stream would be managed by a third-party tech company that specialized in corporate events, and Priya had already identified several vulnerabilities in their system that would allow us to enhance the broadcast. You want to hack the live stream? I want to provide additional context for the viewers, she corrected. Everything we share will be true and publicly available information. We're just going to present it in a more comprehensive format. Tuesday and Wednesday were spent in preparation. I gathered more evidence, organized screenshots, and created a timeline of Lada's deception that was thorough enough to satisfy a forensic accountant. Priya worked on the technical aspects, developing what she called presentation enhancements for the live stream. Meanwhile, I had to maintain the pretense of normalcy with Lada, which was harder than I'd expected. Every conversation felt like a performance. Every kiss felt like betrayal, and every time she mentioned her meetings or networking events, I had to resist the urge to confront her with what I knew. But the hardest part was watching her lie with such casual ease. She'd developed an entire vocabulary of deception. Client meetings for dates, brand collaborations for romantic dinners, industry networking for whatever she and Brett were doing that required her to come home with her lipstick smudged and her hair slightly messed up. Wednesday evening, she announced that she'd be attending the networking event on Thursday. It's a great opportunity to meet potential sponsors, she said, not meeting my eyes. Brett Davidson is one of the speakers, and Yasmin thinks he might be interested in representing me. Brett Davidson, I repeated, as if I was trying to remember where I'd heard the name. He's this really successful brand consultant. Yasmin says he's helped launch several major influencer careers. Sounds like exactly what you need. I'll probably be out late. These industry events always run long, and there's usually an after-party. Of course there is. Thursday arrived with the kind of crisp October weather that made Boston look like a postcard. I took the day off work, telling my boss I had a family emergency that required my immediate attention. It wasn't entirely a lie. My relationship was definitely in a state of emergency, and I was about to provide some immediate attention to the situation. Priya and I met at her warehouse lab to go over the final details. She'd assembled what looked like a mobile command center, multiple laptops, several tablets, and enough networking equipment to run a small internet service provider. "Are you ready for this?" she asked as we loaded everything into her van. I thought about the past month of being treated like an inconvenience, of having my concerns dismissed, of being slowly erased from Lada's life while she built something new with someone else. I thought about Brett's wife, probably getting ready for what she thought was a normal professional event, unaware that she was about to discover her husband's infidelity in the most public way possible. "I'm ready," I said. "Then let's go crash a party." The Fairmont Copley Plaza was the kind of hotel that charged $30 for a cocktail and made you feel grateful for the privilege. The Influence and Impact networking event had taken over the entire mezzanine level, with registration tables, sponsor displays, and enough branded step-and-repeat backdrops to stock a small photo studio. Priya and I had registered under fake names. She was Dr. Patricia Park, Digital Innovation Consultant, and I was Michael Chang, Content Strategy Specialist. The fake credentials had cost us $200 each, but they came with official badges and access to all event areas, including the VIP reception where Brett would be schmoozing with potential clients. "Target acquired," Priya whispered, nodding toward the registration area. Lada stood near the check-in table, wearing a black dress that I'd never seen before and probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked stunning, confident, and completely at ease in a way that made my chest tighten with a mixture of attraction and rage. Next to her stood Brett Davidson, even more impressive in person than in his carefully curated social media photos. But what caught my attention was the woman standing 10 feet away, studying the event program with the focused attention of someone who took professional networking seriously. Natalie Chen was smaller than I'd expected from her photos, but she radiated the kind of quiet authority that came from years of arguing cases in front of judges and juries. She wore a navy blue suit that was expensive but understated, and when she looked up from her program, her gaze swept the room with the analytical precision of someone who missed nothing. "This is going to be complicated," I muttered. "The best revenge always is," Priya replied, setting up her equipment at a high-top table near the back of the room. "Remember, we're not here to create drama. We're here to reveal truth. The event began with a series of presentations about personal branding, monetization strategies, and the future of influencer marketing. Brett was the third speaker, and his presentation was polished, engaging, and completely focused on helping people transform their social media presence into profitable businesses. If I hadn't known he was cheating on his wife, I might have been impressed. Leda sat in the front row, asking intelligent questions and taking notes like an attentive student. She was playing the role of ambitious influencer perfectly, and I realized this was probably how she justified the affair to herself. It wasn't cheating, it was career development. "Livestream is active," Priya whispered, showing me her laptop screen. "We've got about 300 viewers online, plus everyone in the room. How long before you can take control?" "Give me 10 minutes to map their security protocols." I spent those 10 minutes watching Leda and Brett interact with the subtle intimacy of people who were sleeping together but trying to hide it. A hand on the shoulder that lingered too long. Eye contact that was more intense than professional. The way she laughed at his jokes with genuine delight instead of the polite chuckles you'd give a business contact. Meanwhile, Natalie Chen sat 3 rows behind them, taking notes on her tablet and occasionally glancing at her husband with what looked like pride. She had no idea that the woman in the front row was planning to go home with her husband tonight. "I'm in," Priya announced quietly. "Ready when you are." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. When Brett finished his presentation and opened the floor for questions, Priya would take control of the live stream and begin displaying additional information about the speakers. Screenshots of text messages, social media posts, timeline evidence, everything organized into a presentation that would tell the story of the affair with devastating clarity. "Ladies and gentlemen," Brett said as his official presentation concluded, "I'd love to take some questions about personal branding and monetization strategies." Hands shot up around the room. Brett pointed to a woman in the middle section who asked about Instagram algorithm changes. Then he called on a man near the back who wanted advice about working with brand sponsors. "One more question," Brett said, scanning the room. Leda raised her hand, and Brett's face lit up with what was probably meant to look like professional enthusiasm but came across as something much more personal. "Yes," the lady in the front row. "I'm curious about the ethics of personal branding," Leda said, her voice carrying clearly through the room's sound system. "How do you maintain authenticity while building a profitable online presence?" It was a good question, and under different circumstances, I might have been proud of her for asking it. But given the context, it felt like a masterclass in irony. "That's an excellent question," Brett began, launching into what was clearly a well-rehearsed answer about transparency and audience trust. "Now," Priya whispered, her fingers flying across her keyboard. The large screens that had been displaying Brett's presentation slides suddenly changed. Instead of corporate graphics about brand strategy, they now showed a screenshot of text messages between 2 phones. The contact name at the top read Brett, and the messages were unmistakably romantic. "Can't stop thinking about last night," read one message from 3 days ago. "You're incredible," read another from last week. "When can I see you again?" From yesterday morning. The room fell silent as people processed what they were seeing. Brett stopped mid-sentence, staring at the screens with the expression of someone watching their life implode in real time. "What the hell is this?" he said, but his microphone was still active, so his confusion echoed through the room and into the live stream. The screens changed again, now showing Leda's responses to Brett's messages. Her replies were just as damning, full of references to secret meetings, romantic dinners, and plans for future encounters. "I love how you make me feel," read one of her messages from 2 weeks ago. "You're so much more exciting than my boring life at home," read another. Leda had gone pale, her confident composure cracking as she realized her private conversations were being broadcast to a room full of industry professionals and hundreds of online viewers. But the presentation wasn't finished. The screens now displayed a split image, Brett's wedding photos on one side and screenshots of his recent Instagram stories with Leda on the other. The timeline made the progression of the affair crystal clear, showing how Brett had gone from posting happy anniversary messages with his wife to sharing romantic dinners with his mistress. "This is some kind of mistake," Brett said, but his voice lacked conviction. He looked around the room desperately, as if searching for technical support that could somehow undo what everyone had already seen. That's when Natalie Chen stood up. She moved with the controlled precision of someone who had just received devastating information but was determined to handle it with dignity. She walked to the front of the room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor in the absolute silence that had fallen over the event. "Brett," she said, her voice carrying clearly without a microphone. "I think we need to talk." The live stream was still active, capturing every moment as Brett's wife confronted him in front of 300 online viewers and a room full of people who would definitely be posting about this on social media within minutes. "Natalie, I can explain." "No," she said, cutting him off. "You really can't." She turned to face Leda, who was still sitting in the front row looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "And you?" Natalie continued, her lawyer training evident in the way she commanded the room. "I hope whatever you thought you were getting from my husband was worth destroying 2 relationships for." Then she walked out, leaving Brett standing at the podium in front of screens that were still displaying evidence of his infidelity, and Leda sitting in a room full of people who were already pulling out their phones to document the drama. "I think our work here is done," Priya whispered, beginning to pack up her equipment. "But I wasn't ready to leave yet. I wanted to see how this played out, wanted to watch Leda face the consequences of her choices in real time." Brett had abandoned the podium and was trying to catch up with his wife, but Natalie was already in the elevator by the time he reached the lobby. Meanwhile, Leda sat frozen in her chair as the event organizers tried to restore order, and the other attendees buzzed with excitement about what they'd just witnessed. Her phone was buzzing constantly, probably notifications from social media as the story began spreading online. The live stream had captured everything, and I was sure that clips of the confrontation would be all over Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok within hours. Finally, Leda stood up and began walking toward the exit, her confident stride replaced by the uncertain steps of someone whose world had just collapsed. She was almost to the door when she saw me. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw the exact moment when she realized that this wasn't a coincidence. The shock, the recognition, and then the dawning understanding that I had orchestrated everything she'd just experienced. She started walking toward me, her face a mixture of rage and humiliation. "Milo," she said when she was close enough that others couldn't hear, "what did you do?" "I updated my status," I replied, showing her my phone screen. My Facebook relationship status now read single, and I'd posted a link to the live stream with the caption, "Sometimes the truth comes out in the most unexpected ways." Authenticity. Matters. Personal branding. The post already had dozens of likes and comments from people who had watched the drama unfold online. Leda stared at my phone, then back at my face, as if she was seeing me clearly for the first time in months. "You ruined everything," she whispered. "No," I said, feeling calmer than I had in weeks. "I just made sure everyone could see what was already there." The aftermath of what the internet quickly dubbed Influencer-gate unfolded faster than I could have imagined. By Friday morning, clips of the confrontation had been viewed over 2 million times across various social media platforms. Brett's company website was down, probably crashed from traffic or deliberately taken offline. Leda's Instagram comments were flooded with a mixture of criticism and support, though the critics seemed to be winning. I spent Friday working from home, partly because I didn't want to deal with questions from my coworkers, but mostly because I wanted to monitor the fallout in real time. It was like watching a particularly dramatic reality show, except I had written the script. Priya stopped by around noon with coffee and updates from her own social media monitoring. "Brett's wife filed for divorce," she announced, settling onto my couch with her laptop. "It's already public record. She's asking for everything. The house, the business, even his precious Porsche." That was fast. Corporate lawyers don't mess around. She probably had the papers drawn up before she got home last night. Priya showed me her screen. But here's the really interesting part. She's also filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau about Brett's company practices. Apparently, she's been suspicious about his client relationships for months and started doing her own investigation. What did she find? Financial irregularities, questionable contract terms, and evidence that he's been using company resources to fund his affairs. Plural. Leda wasn't his first side piece, just his most recent. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sympathy. Vindication because it meant Brett was getting exactly what he deserved, but sympathy because I knew what it felt like to discover that someone you trusted had been lying to you for months. "What about Leda?" I asked. That's where it gets complicated. Priya pulled up Leda's Instagram profile, which showed her follower count dropping in real time. She's lost about 30,000 followers since yesterday, but she's also gained about 15,000 new ones. Apparently there's a whole subset of people who love drama and want to follow along with whatever happens next. So she's actually benefiting from this? In the short term, maybe, but her brand partnerships are falling apart. 3 companies have already posted statements distancing themselves from her, and Yasmin, her manager, put out a press release saying they're reassessing their professional relationship. I pulled up Leda's latest post, which was a carefully crafted apology that managed to take responsibility while simultaneously positioning herself as a victim of manipulation. The comments were brutal, but she was right that controversy could be monetized if you were smart about it. "Are you okay with this?" Priya asked, studying my face. "I mean, you got your revenge, but she's not exactly destroyed." I thought about it. Was I okay with Leda potentially turning her humiliation into a career opportunity? Part of me wanted her to suffer more, to face consequences that couldn't be spun into content for her followers. But another part of me was just tired of caring about what happened to her. "I'm okay with it," I said finally. I never wanted to destroy her life. I just wanted her to face the truth about her choices. And Brett? Brett's a different story. He's married, he's been cheating on his wife for months, and he's been using his business to facilitate affairs with clients. He deserves whatever's coming to him. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Leda's name, and I realized this would be our first direct conversation since the event. "Answer it," Priya said, "but put it on speaker." I accepted the call. "Hello, Leda." "Milo?" Her voice was strained, exhausted in a way I'd never heard before. "We need to talk." "I think we've said everything we need to say. Please, just give me 5 minutes to explain." I looked at Priya, who nodded encouragingly. "Fine, you have 5 minutes. Can we meet somewhere? This isn't something I want to discuss over the phone." "No, whatever you want to say, you can say it now." There was a long pause, and I could hear traffic in the background. She was probably driving, maybe heading to another crisis meeting with Yasmin or trying to escape the attention that was now following her everywhere. "I never meant for things to happen the way they did," she said finally. "With Brett, I mean. It started as a business relationship, and then it became something else, and I didn't know how to tell you. You didn't know how to tell me, so you decided to lie for months instead. I was scared. I thought if I could figure out what I wanted, I could end things with you cleanly, without hurting you." "Without hurting me?" I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. "Leda, you've been telling people we were on a break for a month. You've been using our shared accounts to plan dates with another man. You've been coming home to me after spending evenings with him. How exactly did you think that wasn't going to hurt me?" "I know how it looks. It doesn't matter how it looks. It matters what you did." Another long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more vulnerable than I'd heard it in months. "I messed up, Milo. I know that. But what you did yesterday, that was cruel. What I did was reveal the truth. Everything that appeared on those screens came from your phone, your messages, your choices. I didn't make you cheat on me, and I didn't make Brett cheat on his wife. You humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. You humiliated yourself. I just made sure people could see it." "So what happens now?" she asked. "Are you done, or is there more coming?" I realized this was the question I'd been avoiding since yesterday. Was I done? Had my need for revenge been satisfied, or was this just the beginning of a longer campaign to make Leda and Brett pay for what they'd done? "I'm done," I said, and I meant it. "As far as I'm concerned, we're even." "And us? Is there any chance we could try to work through this?" The question caught me off guard. Even after everything that had happened, part of me had been wondering if there was a way to salvage our relationship. But hearing her ask the question made me realize how completely my feelings had changed. "No, Leda, there's no us anymore." "Because of Brett? Because of you. Because of the choices you made, the lies you told, and the way you treated me like I was disposable. Brett was just the symptom. You were the disease." She was quiet for so long that I thought she might have hung up. Finally, she said, "I'll come get my things this weekend." "I'll leave them with the building manager. I don't want to see you." "Milo!" I ended the call before she could say whatever she was planning to say. Some conversations don't need conclusions, they just need to end. "How do you feel?" Priya asked. "Empty," I said, which was true. The rage and hurt that had been driving me for the past week were gone, replaced by a hollow feeling that was somehow worse than the anger had been. "That's normal. Revenge is like junk food. It feels satisfying while you're consuming it, but it doesn't actually nourish you." "Are you saying I shouldn't have done it?" "I'm saying you did what you needed to do, and now you get to figure out what comes next." What came next, it turned out, was surprisingly mundane. I spent the weekend cleaning my apartment, removing traces of Leda's presence, and rearranging furniture to make the space feel like mine again. I changed passwords on all my accounts, canceled subscriptions we'd shared, and updated my address with services that had been sending packages to both of us. By Sunday evening, it was as if she had never lived there at all. Monday brought a return to normal life, or at least the new version of normal that didn't include a girlfriend who treated me like a supporting character in her social media story. My coworkers had seen the news. It was impossible to avoid if you spent any time online, but they were tactful enough not to ask direct questions. "How are you holding up?" asked Sarah from marketing, the same Sarah who had first alerted Zach to Leda's infidelity. "Better than expected," I said, which was true. I'd thought I would feel more devastated by the end of a 2-year relationship, but instead I felt relieved, like I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale. "Good for you," she said. That whole situation looked exhausting. It had been exhausting, I realized. The constant second-guessing, the feeling of being dismissed and marginalized, the sense that I was competing with her phone for attention, all of that was gone now, replaced by a peace I hadn't felt in months. Tuesday brought the final chapter of the Brett Davidson story. Priya forwarded me a news article from a local business journal. Local marketing consultant under investigation for financial irregularities. The article detailed how Brett's estranged wife had provided evidence to authorities suggesting that he'd been using company funds for personal expenses, including expensive dinners and gifts for clients who were also romantic partners. "He's facing potential fraud charges," Priya explained when she called. "Turns out that when you use business credit cards to wine and dine your mistresses, it creates a paper trail that forensic accountants can follow." "What about his business?" "Clients are fleeing faster than passengers on a sinking ship. His website is still down, his social media accounts have been deleted, and his office lease is up for subletting. I'd say his career in lifestyle consulting is officially over." I felt a grim satisfaction at the news. Brett had destroyed his marriage, his business, and his reputation for the sake of affairs that he'd apparently been having for years. The consequences felt proportional to his choices. Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor. I was working late at the office when security called to say someone was in the lobby asking to see me. I assumed it was Priya with updates on the ongoing drama, but when I got downstairs, I found Natalie Chen waiting in the visitor area. She looked tired but composed, wearing the same kind of understated professional attire I'd seen at the networking event. When she saw me, she stood up with the precise movements of someone who had thought carefully about this encounter. "Mr. Chen," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Natalie Chen. I believe we have something to discuss." We found a quiet corner in the building's coffee shop, which was nearly empty at 8 in the evening. Natalie ordered black coffee and got straight to the point. "I know you were responsible for what happened at the networking event," she said. My first instinct was to deny it, but something in her tone suggested that denial would be pointless. "How do you know?" "Because I'm a lawyer, and I've spent the past week investigating everything related to my husband's affairs. I found evidence of the hack, traced it back to its source, and identified the people involved." She sipped her coffee calmly. "I also know that you had help from someone with significant technical expertise. Are you here to threaten me with legal action?" "I'm here to thank you." That was not what I'd expected. "Thank me?" "Mr. Chen, I've been married to Brett for 3 years, and I've suspected him of cheating for at least 18 months. But suspecting and knowing are different things, and I could never gather enough evidence to confront him directly." She set down her coffee cup with deliberate precision. "What you did gave me everything I needed to end my marriage and protect my financial interests. I didn't do it for you," I said. "I did it for me." "I know, but the result was the same. You exposed the truth, and the truth set me free." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "I'm handling my own divorce, obviously, but if you ever need legal representation for anything related to this situation, please call me. No charge." "I don't think that will be necessary." "Probably not, but the offer stands." She stood up, preparing to leave. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you regret it? What you did?" I thought about the question seriously. Did I regret exposing Leda's affair in such a public way? Did I regret the humiliation she'd faced, the damage to her reputation, the way her carefully constructed influencer image had crumbled in front of hundreds of people? "No," I said. "I don't regret it." "Good. People like Brett and your ex-girlfriend count on the fact that their victims will be too polite, too embarrassed, or too afraid to expose the truth. When someone finally calls their bluff, it serves as a warning to others." After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, thinking about what she'd said. I'd started this whole thing as a personal vendetta, a way to make Leda and Brett pay for the pain they'd caused me. But it had turned into something larger, a reckoning that had freed Natalie from a dishonest marriage and potentially saved other people from becoming Brett's future victims. That night, I updated my social media status one final time. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is show them the truth about themselves, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. The post got more likes and comments than anything I'd ever shared, but I barely paid attention to the responses. I was done performing for an audience, done trying to craft the perfect image for public consumption. I was ready to get back to living my actual life instead of the curated version I'd been presenting online. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking up to the sound of notification alerts from someone else's phone.